Rocks. In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint rocks or boulders or stones, whatever you want to call them. We're going to paint them, and I will show you how I do it from start to finish, kind of like how I plan it out, and then how I render it. So as you can see, I started off with my rough underpainting, and this could work as rocks, but it's not quite what I'm looking for. So I'm actually going to finesse it, and I'm going to start that by outlining the different edges of the rocks. So if we think of rocks and we think of stones, we know that there's multiple sides to them, right? I mean, there's more sides to a rock than there is to a cube. It's kind of almost chaotic and haphazard because you have to think that it's been fractioned off time and time again. So there's going to be small sides, there's going to be wide sides, long sides, short sides. And that's basically what I'm drawing right here. Now, it may look a little bit funny at the moment, kind of like a flat 2D form, but as soon as we begin to add the sides of light and the sides of shadow, and we carve it out of place in 3D space, it will begin to look much more like a rock and stones. So now that I have the basic form kind of drawn out, I'm going to start adding an introduction of the light. So a trick that I like to do is I like to take a lighter highlight and kind of re-outline parts of the rock. So this, in effect, gives us kind of like the deep crevices because the outline will become the shadow, and then it also gives us the very high point of the side or the facet closest to the light source. So that's what the dark lines will become. They will become the parts that are sort of hidden away from the light source, so they don't really catch any light. And then the more white bits, those are going to become the facets that are glinting off the light. They are catching the light. They are, in fact, facing or closest to the light source than any of the other facets are. And now that that is pretty much taken care of, I'm going to start painting in the actual facets of the stone. So the first one is the top. I'm just going to take a bit of that kind of grassy, mossy look and drag it over the surface, kind of as if the lichen or moss or whatever it is you want to call it, is kind of growing on the rock itself. So maybe it's a mix of soil, maybe it's a mix of stone and soil. But this is the sort of thing that you have to think about. You have to think about what is the actual surface of the stone. Is it going to be affected by dirt? Is it going to be affected by moss or lichen? Is it maybe in the middle of a desert where there's only going to be sand? So these are the sorts of things you have to consider. And since this particular piece is very organic, very green, very genteel, I'm going for that mossy kind of overgrown look. As I am painting these surfaces, these, broader surfaces, I'm kind of playing with the texture as well. So I'm not making it a single flat color. I'm kind of painting a gradient within these sides. And that's to kind of emphasize that maybe it's at a bit of an angle. Maybe parts of it is facing more towards one side than the other. And I'm also going to be carving in a little bit of cracks or imperfections into the stone, kind of like here. And I'm just going to speed this up a bit because that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing for the next 20 seconds, is I'm just going to be painting in the surfaces, the large surfaces of the sides of the rock, and just kind of deciding what imperfections I want to be there. Maybe I want to emphasize some, maybe I'll end up hiding some. But the more imperfections you have on the sides of the stone, the more you can emphasize how light is kind of interacting with that object in your piece. And the more you can show how light interacts, the more 3D it will look. Now let's talk about color for a second. Up till now, I've kind of been using this nice cool green or blue to kind of show the rocks, and it kind of plays with the flowers I have as well as the sky. But I'm also going to put in some warm tones, and the reason for that is just to give it a bit of visual interest, but also because there are certain, I don't know, do I call it breeds of lichen? There are certain types of overgrowth that have warm orange hues to them, and it would be kind of weird if there was only one type of overgrowth in this environment. So I'm going to introduce kind of that rusty orange color and have more than one type of organism, I guess we could say, growing on the rocks. Now, something that's kind of fun to consider is when does one organism thrive and when does the other organism thrive? So in this instance, the flat surfaces that get a lot of sunlight, I'm kind of giving that to the green moss, the green grasses. And then in the little nooks and crannies where maybe there's not as much sunlight, or maybe like, the humidity is a bit different, I'm gonna give that a little bit to the more orange undergrowth. Now, once again, I'm just going to speed it up a little bit because really it's just repetitive rendering. I'm just kind of working my way along from one side to the other and really working in those imperfections, thinking about where my light is hitting, where the shadows are maybe not getting the light, so therefore I have to bring them out a bit more. And it's looking pretty okay at this stage. The only thing is that maybe it's a little bit too in your face. So something that I like to do, no matter what process I'm doing, whether it's sketching or painting, is I like to kind of do a wash. And this is something that I know a lot of oil painters will do. They'll do a wash to just kind of like tone it back and kind of like marry the hues and marry the colors. And that's what I'm going to do right here. So you're going to see that I kind of like paint over everything and I kind of bring it back just ever so slightly. And once I do that, I'll continue to finesse the highlights, continue to finesse how it blends in with the rest of the stones. And I'm just kind of using a soft brush to do that because I don't want to be too hard. I want to kind of be gentle with the treatment at this stage. Now after this point, it really is just rinse and repeat. You just kind of figure out which details you want to emphasize, which ones maybe you want to, bring back a little bit. Maybe some of them need a bit more attention as well. Keep in mind your edge treatments. Sometimes you want to go hard, but you don't want everything to be a hard line. So think about where you're going to lose the sharpness. And usually you're going to lose the sharpness of edges in the shadow because we don't have that stark contrast to tell us how close or how sharp something is when there's not light to reveal that to us. So the more something is in shadow, the less detail of it we're likely to see. And I'm just gonna kind of keep on continuing with this. I'll put on some music since I really don't have much else to say about rocks at this point, other than just, once you get to this stage, keep finessing it until you think it looks good. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you found that helpful, and I will catch you next time. Nuggies. Bye.